Seller credits versus price reductions. It's surprising that this topic isn't standard real estate dogma. I have never heard anyone articulate it, so that is why I feel compelled to explain the big problem with seller price reductions. I will keep the math and concept very simple so that by the end of this video, you will know exactly when and why to avoid price reductions. Sadly, I usually only hear about seller credits and price reductions after it is too late. Agents will send me commission instructions or commission waivers after they have already hashed out a bad idea with another agent. Seller credits are fairly common and usually relate to a credit for repairs. The buyer sends their request for repairs form with a list of items that need to be fixed. Often, instead of fixing these items, the seller credits the buyer a dollar amount equivalent of what the cost would be to repair such items. A common mistake with seller credits is sometimes they exceed the buyer's non-recurring closing costs. The seller credit is applied to a buyer's closing costs. So if the seller credit exceeds the closing costs, then what happens? Some agents mistakenly think that escrow will just cut a check for the remainder. Well, this is not the case. Only the amount of the closing costs is used from the credit. So if the closing costs are less than the credit, then the entire credit isn't used. Money is left on the table. This is an easy problem to fix. Just make sure the closing costs exceed the credit. If it does not, then have the seller pay for repairs during escrow. But this isn't the revelation or the most important point. No, that pertains to the price reduction, which is usually a terrible idea. Here's how it sometimes begins. A buyer's agent might offer a portion of their commission or to waive the cooperating broker compensation entirely. In exchange, they ask the seller to proportionally reduce the sales price. Agents, please don't do this. This is never the answer. Number one, the agent should not concede their commission. Number two, the buyer will not be able to negotiate as good of a purchase price. And number three, the math of this arrangement is self-defeating. And in a moment, I will get into why the math makes this prohibitory. Another scenario is when there is a request for repair, but instead of a seller credit, a price reduction is requested by the buyer. This is a problem too, and I will explain why. I will use an even $1 million sales price for an easy round number as an example. The median sales price in Orange County is $990,000 anyway, so we aren't far off. Let me start with an example of an agent that is acting as the buyer or an agent offering to credit the buyer a large chunk of their commission for whatever reason. If a real estate agent offers to concede 2% of the commission of the sales price in the form of a reduction, then that is $20,000 off. So our sample sales price of $1 million drops to $980,000. This price drop will save the buyer $106 a month on their monthly mortgage payment on a conventional 30-year fixed mortgage at a 7% interest rate. But remember, this monthly savings of $106 is accepted instead of receiving a $20,000 lump sum. Now, if you divide the lump sum by the monthly savings, it takes over 188 months to break even. That's almost 16 years. Will the buyer even own the home that long? Let's apply this example to a request for repair. The buyer can request a seller credit $10,000 or get a $10,000 sales price reduction. Well, a $10,000 sales price reduction will lower the mortgage payment $66.53 a month. That will take over 150 months before the full $10,000 is realized. That's over 12 years. Now, if the mortgage interest rate is lower, then the time needed to break even is even higher. One objection I hear is that property taxes are lower when there is a sales price reduction. This is true, but minuscule. A $10,000 sales price reduction will reduce the buyer's property taxes $9.16 a month. So, by foregoing a $10,000 credit over a price reduction, it takes over 132 months to break even. That's 11 years, even factoring in property tax savings. Yes, property taxes, which are tax deductible anyway. These are modest examples. I have seen other scenarios where it would take the buyer decades to break even. Remember, a seller credit is a cash-for-cash exchange. This means that if the seller credits a buyer $5,000, then the buyer delivers to escrow $5,000 less cash needed to close, which means there is an extra $5,000 in the buyer's account. The entire cash savings is immediately realized by the buyer. There is one exception to this, and that is when it is a cash buyer. Since the entire transaction is in cash, a sales price reduction directly reduces the cash the buyer delivers to escrow to close. However, I do not think that commission-related sales price reductions should be done up front, as they limit the buyer's ability to negotiate. In summary, finance buyers should always accept a seller's credit or commission rebate from the broker instead of the sales price reduction. A cash buyer should only consider a sales price reduction during the negotiation of the request for repair. Please comment with any questions. Thank you.